the Girl Means Business podcast. I'm your host, Kendra Swalls. Over the last few years, I have built a business that allowed me to quit my 9-to-5, spend more time with the ones that I love, and live my best life. Now, I'm sharing everything I learned along the way with you. Each week, my guest and I will share actionable tips, tangible advice, and honest conversations to help you build your dream business. So get ready to take notes and put in the work, because this girl means business. Hey guys, welcome back to another week here on the Girl Means Business podcast. Couple things really quick. One, if the audio sounds a little wonky today, I apologize. My microphone just died on me this week. Every time I plug it into my computer, it tells me that it's using too much power all of a sudden. So I don't know what's going on. I'm currently just recording with my handy dandy trusty iPhone headphones. So again, I apologize if the audio on this intro is just a little bit not up to par, but I think it's going to all be worthwhile because today's episode is a really, really exciting one. If you have listened to the show, you've probably heard me talk a little bit about my slight obsession with this thing called the Enneagram. And unless you've been living under a rock, you've probably had friends or family or someone you know talk about their Enneagram number. And if you're not familiar with it, I'll give you a quick little overview. The Enneagram is a personality test, but in my opinion, it goes a little deeper than a personality test because it encompasses so much more than just your personality. You know, when I was teaching full time, we would do these, team building exercises and these professional development days. And a lot of times they would have us do our personality types. Either it was through, I can't even think of the names of, but there's been ones that I've done where it was like, are you a lion or are you a tiger or are you a bear? I don't know what they all are, but and you have the ones that are like, you're an NSFJKPLOR. I don't know, but those a lot of times are geared towards just certain aspects of your personality. Whereas I feel like personally, the Enneagram was the first test I've taken that truly encapsulated who I am, the good, the bad, the ugly. And it wasn't so much these are your strengths and weaknesses. It was more like, this is why you are the way you are. This is why you feel the things you feel. This is why you are thinking the way you think. And I remember being on an airplane. I was flying from Nashville to Denver, and I listened to a podcast with Annie Downs where she was interviewing other Enneagram type 7s, which is what I am. I'm a 7. Technically, I think it's called the entertainer. And the first time I heard this interview, I remember being on that airplane. I can tell you everything about what was going on around me because I was so just amazed at how much this interview and this episode of the podcast I listened to described me in a way that had never been described before. It was this strange feeling of someone understands me, someone gets me, someone sees things in me that I didn't even realize were true. And for example, one of the things that I realized was that as a 7, I run away from difficult emotions like it's the plague. I can't stand it. I am terrible. If you need somebody to go to a hospital or a funeral with you, I am not the girl to call because I am awkward. I'm uncomfortable. It's the worst thing for me. But if you need somebody that is going to be upbeat and fun and bring the life of the party, then I'm the girl to call. And for the longest time, I didn't understand why that was. I just thought that, I don't know what I thought, honestly. I just knew that I hated uncomfortable situations. I hated moments where I didn't know what to say. I didn't know exactly what I was supposed to be feeling. I just can't stand being in situations where it's sad and upsetting. My first go-to is to make jokes or turn to a happier topic because I don't like difficult emotions. And when I first heard her talk about that as being part of a 7's personality, it just clicked. I was like, oh my gosh, that is what I've done my entire life. And I had no idea that I was doing it for these reasons. Another example is 7s have serious FOMO, which is 1000% me. A perfect example is my husband and I were at dinner one night And I'd been scrolling through Facebook in the car on the way to dinner, and I saw that someone I knew, wasn't even a close friend, just kind of a Facebook acquaintance, that she and her daughter had gone to a Jonas Brothers concert the night before here in Dallas. And I remember looking at that photo and the caption, I was like, oh, that's so fun for them. They went to a Jonas Brothers concert. Am I a Jonas Brothers fan? Yeah. Am I obsessed? No. Would I have probably spent hundreds of dollars on tickets? Not at all. Probably not. But was I jealous that I didn't get to go to that concert? Absolutely. Because as a 7, I hate missing out on things. I hate feeling like that there's something happening that I'm not part of. And the more I realize that about myself, the more I'm able to kind of regulate it a little bit and understand why I feel the way I feel, and why other people don't always understand why I feel the way I feel. So anyway, long story short, today on the show, we have an Enneagram expert. I am so excited about this interview. I had the best time talking with Barbie. She is so much fun and a blast and has such insight into the Enneagram. And I think it's going to be really interesting to hear, even if you don't know your Enneagram number. I do suggest that you go and take the test and figure out what number you are, because it's interesting to know. And it's also really interesting to know what other people in your life are. You know, when my husband and I first got married, we did the whole love languages assessment, and we found out, you know, my love language is gifts and words of affirmation, and my husband's is acts of service and physical touch, 2 very different gifts. And so knowing that about each other was a huge help in us understanding how to communicate and how to show our affection for one another. And I think of the Enneagram in the same way. Knowing what my number is and knowing what other people around me's number is helps me to better understand them and interact with them and not get upset about certain things or choose my battles a little bit more. And so within your business, knowing your Enneagram type is a huge part of understanding how you run your business, how you interact with potential clients, how you associate with other people. And that's a huge part of business. So I think that it definitely pertains to not only your personal life, but your business life, which we'll get into in this interview. I know I'm kind of rambling on, but I'm just so excited. So I won't have you wait any longer. Here is my interview with our Enneagram expert. Hi, Barbie. Welcome to the Girl Means Business podcast. I am super excited to talk to you today. How are you?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
Thank you. All right. So to get started, I want you to share a little bit about your story, who you are, what you do, and how you got into what it is that you do now.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
If you've been listening to the Girl Means Business podcast for any amount of time, then you know my love of email marketing runs deep. Not only is it a great way to generate new leads, but it's one of the most effective methods for nurturing warm leads and turning them into sales. Now, over the years, I've tested several email platforms, and my favorite by far is Flowdesk. Not only do they make email marketing simple and easy, even for the technically challenged, but they have everything you need to create stunning emails, capture leads, make sales, and automate the entire process, giving you time back in your busy day. And the cherry on top is you're only charged one flat fee no matter how many subscribers you have. So while other platforms will increase your price when you go over your pricing tier limit, Flowdesk has no price increases or hidden fees. If you're ready to give Flowdesk a try, click the link below in the show notes to save 50% off your first year. Let Flowdesk help you design emails people will love. Click the link below and check it out. I have a feeling you're going to love it just as much as I do.
All right, so I won't bore you with the details. It's a long, very drawn out story from getting here to there, but the long and short of it was it's always been on my heart to be a counselor, but getting there and the education and all those things, it's a long road. And so I was trying to think of, man, what can I do that plays to my strength of listening to people and helping them through tough situations without having that, the credentials behind it, but still something that's going to help me build towards that, and still something that's going to play to those strengths. And after going through kind of a rough breakup and just asking a lot of questions of myself and of God, and am I on the right path, and all of those things, I kind of discovered the Enneagram in the heat of that, and was like, oh my gosh, this is an amazing tool. And then when I discovered that you could be a coach and you could teach other people about their personalities and how it just affects their world in general, I was like immediately, that's what I want to do. That's what's going to help me speak to people and counsel people without the technical counseling, counsel like. So yeah, that was what originally turned me onto it.
I love that. It's so fun. I love those like aha moments when you kind of figure out like what your passion and what you want to do kind of collide. That's so awesome. So for anyone listening who has been living under a rock and doesn't know what the Enneagram is, can you give us sort of a quick little brief overview of what exactly the Enneagram is?
Sure, absolutely. So yeah, it is very confusing and is very in-depth. But the long and short of it is that it's an in-depth personality test and communication tool. Basically, it takes you through the different characteristics of your personality, good and bad. And there are sort of 3 general tracks that people are on. They're either healthy and they're living their best life, surviving and thriving. They're somewhere in between. They're on autopilot. Maybe they're not being challenged, or not being pushed in the direction they need to go, or they're unhealthy and they're living out those negative characteristics. So the Enneagram is kind of walking you through how you can become healthier and how you can kind of change a negative narrative in your life and make it a positive one.
That's awesome. So I first heard about the Enneagram through a friend. I think someone had posted about it on social media, and I was like, okay, I've done all kinds of personality tests from when I was a teacher. We had to do them as part of like staff development. And then I've done them in some of the mentoring class or groups that I've been in. And I've always loved the idea of personality tests and kind of knowing like what makes you work, because I think that's so interesting. It's really intriguing to me. And I actually, at one point, I wanted to be a counselor as well. Like I wanted to be a school counselor because I love helping people and talking to people. And so I think we kind of have that similar thread of these types of things are really, really intriguing. And I'm always trying to find new ways to understand myself better and understand like what makes me tick and why I do the things I do, or why anyone does the things that they do. And so I'd heard about it. I think I took an online test at one point, like one of the free ones. And I was like, okay, it gave me a number. And I was like, I don't really know what this means. I don't have time to figure it out. So I just kind of let it go. And then over the past like 6 months, I just kept hearing people talk about it, and they kept saying like, oh, well, this person's a this and this person's a that. And I was like, okay, I need to really figure out what I am. And so I took the test again, and I'm 100% a 7. And
nice.
I listened to a podcast episode because I was like, I don't have time to read through everything about a 7. So I need somebody to just like give me the high points. So I listened to a podcast that my niece had told me about, and I was on a flight from Nashville to Denver. And so I had time and I listened to it. And it was the first time that I felt like somebody was explaining me so perfectly that I was like, how is this possible? But it's 120% who I am, the good, the bad, everything. And after that, I was like, okay, I'm obsessed. I want to know what everybody in my life is. I want to know like what makes them tick, how we work together. I just became like addicted to the Enneagram. So I'm super, super excited to dive in a little more with you today and talk about just what it is, how it works, and how it can help people listening either in their personal life, their professional life, and their relationships.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I was the same way. I was like, I think first me and a friend was telling me about it, and she was just kind of like, yeah, I've heard about this, we should take it. And we took some like crappy online test by some random person, and we were like, it basically kind of took you through like all the negatives of your personality. So like our first our first taste of it was like, man, this just makes me feel like horrible about myself. Like, this sounds like the worst. So we kind of disregard it. We're like, that's stupid, whatever. But no, like I'm the same way. I'm such a nerd when it comes to personality tests and understanding how people work and how they tick. And so I've just taken everything at this point in time on my own or through classes. And I didn't really understand what made the Enneagram different from something like the MBTI or StrengthsFinder or any of those other ones, until I kind of started to learn more about what they call like the shadow sides, which is like the negative parts of your personality. But the real beauty in that, and it's not to make you feel crappy or guilty or whatever, the real beauty in that to me is, I don't know about you, but I kind of always had this assumption that there's always some personality type that was like a unicorn, and they were just like out there killing it. They're like the CEO of a company, like they're just very bold and brassy, and they like never have any vulnerabilities or fears or whatever about starting a business or about like networking or about any of these things. Just kind of like boldly go out there and like don't ever look back. And so like learning more and more about each type like showed me that was so untrue, like but in the best possible way, because you're like, oh wait, man, we're all just human. Like we all have something that's hard for us, and we might not go around like flying that freak flag, but there's still some secret things that are hard. And so it just gave me so much more empathy and compassion, and tried to help me see everyone through a different lens, instead of saying, oh man, they're so great and I wish they were like them, but I'm not, and this sucks, and they kind of suck because I'm jealous of them and whatever.
Yeah, no, it's been interesting because so right after I listened to that, or actually it was right before, this is how I kind of got into that podcast that my niece told me about. We had been on a girls trip to Nashville, and there was about 6 of us. And it was my sister-in-law, my niece, their best friends, and a couple other people. And throughout the whole weekend, they kind of kept referring to different people by their Enneagram number. And it was funny because the person who had planned the trip was a 2. And so we kept expecting her to make plans. And we're like, wait, why are we asking her to make plans? She can't make a decision. She's trying to please everybody and it's not going to work, And so it was just funny to see how knowing someone's Enneagram number and knowing a little bit about who they are as a person, it helped us to kind of look at it and go, oh, okay, well, clearly we need to have somebody else in charge of deciding where we're going to go eat, because this person's not going to be able to do it. And yeah, it was just, I think when it comes to relationships, even like with my husband, and he's so anti all this kind of stuff, but I made him take a test just to see. And I felt like I knew what number he was, but I was like, I want to know for sure. And so I made him take it. And of course he was an 8, like I thought. And I was like, okay, now I'm starting to see a little more about like your personality and what makes you tick, and, how I can talk to you in a different way, or how to expect things from you. It's really fun. I love it.
Stay with us. We'll be right back.
Hey, photographers, are you ready to make 2024 your best year yet? Growing a business is tough. You're following all the successful photographers and experts, soaking up their best advice and downloading all their free guides, trying to replicate their success only to come up lacking, blaming yourself when their methods don't work for you. But the truth is, it isn't you. Free content and one-size-fits-all courses can only get you so far. What you need is personalized help and guidance, but that can get expensive. Well, not anymore. I've created the perfect solution to get you personalized results for less than $2 a day. Introducing the Focus Photographer Lab, a one-of-a-kind coaching membership that gets you one-on-one results for a fraction of the cost of traditional coaching. Inside the lab, you'll find the 3 C's to success: classes, coaching, and community. With classes, you gain access to a treasure trove of pre-recorded trainings and invaluable resources. With coaching, you get monthly live trainings and Q&A sessions, along with my favorite part, the weekly one-on-one office hours, where we get to address your unique questions and challenges. And then there's the community, where you get to connect with an amazing group of talented female photographers who share your passion, supporting each other and inspiring each other to greatness.
The best part is it doesn't come with an expensive one-on-one coaching price tag. You get all of that for just $47 a month. You can even try it for free for 14 days to make sure it's a good fit for you. And there is no contract and no obligation. You can cancel at any time. So what are you waiting for? Head down to the show notes and click the link to learn more and get signed up today. And let's make 2024 our best year yet.
Oh, yeah, that's so true. I'm laughing because I did the same thing with my family. Like my family, and I love them. I'm a very much like an ideas person. I like to talk about like the big picture or like a concept. Like I just kind of like to live my life. And maybe you relate to this as well. Like as a 7, like I like to just like get excited about things and like not talk about the practical side. Just like, wouldn't it be cool if, clouds were made of marshmallows and, whatever, like
yes.
all those things. Right. And so like, I just geek out real hard about this stuff. And like, I'm either like all about it and like, I don't care if you want to talk about it or not, like we're going to talk about it or I'm just disinterested. And so when I discovered the Enneagram, it was like that exactly with like my family, my friends. I was like, chasing them down, like you have to take this test so I know what you are, so we can relate better to each other, and like we can see like those dynamics play out, because that was my thing. Like the analytical side of me was like, well, I have to know what my mom and dad are, because those are like my primary influences growing up, and they flavor things as well. And so it's like I have to know what our family dynamic was in order to understand me, so that I can understand how I relate to other people, and blah blah blah. So yeah, and that's like the number one thing you're not supposed to do is like type people before they take the test, but I'm so guilty. I'm guilty.
Well, sometimes it's kind of easy. I mean, sometimes you just kind of know. Hey guys, we're going to take a quick break to remind you about one of our amazing sponsors, HoneyBook. I could not run my business without the help of HoneyBook. They are an incredible support system for my business, not only helping me to organize my clients, my projects, all of the information I need for every session and activity I have scheduled, but they also help me keep everything organized when it comes to my finances. So not only does HoneyBook help me to send invoices, but it gives me reports. It helps me to follow up with invoices that have not been paid or are on a payment plan, allowing them to have auto pay. There's so many features inside of HoneyBook that it is ridiculous. So HoneyBook is offering the Girl Means Business listeners 50% off your first year when you sign up. You can also get a free trial. So if you head to today's show notes at girlmeansbusiness.com/episode 36, not only can you get the link to try out Facebook and sign up for your 50% off discount, but I'm also going to share a link with you that shows you the behind the scenes of how I use HoneyBook for my business. I know a lot of times when you're signing up for a new program, your main question is, will this be a good fit for my business? And how easy is it to use? So I'm giving you a sneak peek behind the scenes into my HoneyBook account, how I use it to track my progress with my clients, how I use it to keep up with invoices and contracts and all the things. So you can get that video and see the behind the scenes at today's show notes. Again, that's girlmeansbusiness.com/episode 36. All right, back to our amazing interview. Okay, so to back up a little bit for people listening who are still kind of new to this whole Enneagram idea, can you walk us through, so the Enneagram has 9 numbers. Can you walk us through a little bit about what each number, just a real brief overview of what they are, and some of the personality traits of those numbers?
Sure. So I'll try my best to wrap up each type. So each one kind of has like a little nickname. So number 1, their nickname is Perfectionist. So we kind of think of this person as like the type A, very organized, very detail oriented.
I always compare it to like a Monica Geller from Friends.
Yeah.
So it was like, that was your type 1 personality right there.
Yeah. So like, that's kind of like the stereotype. But, for those listening who think they might be a type 1 and they're like, but like, I'm not really clean. Like that doesn't necessarily have anything to do with it. It's more about like morality, and if you're very much like a rule follower. So like the example that I use, and it's sort of a silly example, it's very general, but like my mom, she's a type 2 wing 1, but that wing 1 is real strong. And if there is a rule, like she will follow it to a T. Like it doesn't matter if it makes sense or or whatever. There's a rule, she's going to follow it. So like a good example would be my cousin's husband, who is a 2, he like pirated a copy of some movie she said that she really wanted to see and didn't get a chance to. And my mom was horrified because she's like, you pirated it, it's illegal, that's breaking the rules, and I feel bad about having this in my house. And we're like, the FBI is not gonna come knocking down our door because we have a pirated movie. But so that would be type 1. Type 2 is sort of the whoever you would think of in your circle who's just the sweetheart, just a soft-hearted person, typically very sensitive to others' feelings. One of the ways that Beth McCord describes this person is they kind of have like these, sounds odd, but they have like these feeling tentacles. And in other words, they can walk into a room or a party or whatever, and they automatically know the climate of everyone's emotional state. They can tell the person who's not joining a conversation because they feel uncomfortable. They can tell the person who is having a really rough day. Like they're very sensitive to others, and that can be an amazing superpower and asset. And it can also be really rough because they become like spongy with those things. They absorb other people's emotions. So if you have a fight with your spouse or your friend, you take that on the rest of the day, and it's hard to leave at home. Let's see, a type 3, there are achievers and are performers. So they like to be in the spotlight. They like to lead. They like to achieve. They're very goal oriented. Those are our CEOs and our and our leaders. Yep. My sister's a type 3, and they're awesome. They're very they're very goal oriented and very motivated, and they can help other people be motivated. The downside to that is sometimes they can get kind of wrapped up in that hamster wheel. And if they're not in a healthy spot, then they can think, well, the only thing that makes me loved or valuable or important is if I achieve this, or if I get to this next goal, or I start to make the salary. Their importance comes from the applause and not from, just being who they are and who God created them to be. Yeah. Number 4, which is my brother-in-law, is the artist or the bohemian. This person's very comfortable in their emotions. They're very comfortable kind of processing the deeper wells of human emotion and like plummeting those depths. They're very comfortable with all of those things. And so they're kind of viewing the world from this emotional scope and this emotional range. See, number 5, I'm just going to relate to all people I know.
Yeah, no, go for it.
Number 5 would be my dad. This person is very cerebral. They like to be the source that people go to for information. They're our steady rocks. Like that's the person who they're always kind of quietly working behind the scenes and making sure that everything is running smoothly. And it's easy, as much as I hate to say it can be easy to take them for granted. But boy, howdy, when they step out of the picture, like everything, like crap hits the fan. And like your 5 has left the building because they're the ones who were making it run smoothly this whole time, but they weren't asking for credit.
And I will say, I think when my husband took the test, I want to say he was actually maybe a 5 wing 8 or either 8 wing 5. I can't remember, but I know he had those 2 were his strongest, but I feel like he might be more of a 5. So anyway, continue.
Yeah, for sure. See, a 6 is, they're a loyalist. They're good friends. The downside to a 6 would be that they worry a lot. They kind of live a lot in their brain and worst case scenario. But they're also the people who, like, again, like they're our bedrocks. Like they're loyal to the end. They're really good friends. 7s, they're like our fun people. They're nicknamed the entertainer. They kind of buoy everybody up. They're very positive. One of the things that Beth McCord talks about with 7s is that we kind of rely on them to to carry the group as far as morale goes. So, and it's funny, again, talking about group dynamics, like if you have a bunch of people over, but like your typical 7 is missing, like that's very much felt. Like, you know, my mom, she tells the story about, they had this small group, people come over and, you know, read a book of the Bible or something and go through it together, whatever. And so they kind of have homework each week. And she said they had kind of like their fun couples were out of town or something that week. And so she said all the people that came, they were kind of the more studious types. So they came and their homework was done and they did what they were supposed to do and it was great. And, you know, whatever. And they all showed up on time. But she's like, but it wasn't the same because we didn't have like our fun couple. Like it wasn't a party. Like everyone was very studious and they did what they were supposed to do. But like it was not as fun as it was when like their 7s were there. So yeah. And then the 8s are our leaders. I like to call them our M&Ms because they are kind of crunchier on the outside. They might have that hard shell on the outside, but and on the inside, they have a really deep heart for justice and a really deep heart for caring for people who can't care for themselves. So they might kind of have this real tough exterior where people look at them, they're like, oh, that person's kind of intimidating. And like, they have a real strong energy, but like really at the heart of everything that they do, they want to protect people fiercely. So really they're, you know, all goo on the inside. You just have to keep tapping away. But yeah. And yeah, that's all the types.
Oh, wait, did you tell you 9? What about 9s?
Oh, right. I knew I forgot someone. I was like about to go to 10 and I was like, there's not a 10th one. Yeah. So 9s, that's what I am. They're called the peacemakers. They're kind of similar to a 2 in that they're soft-hearted. The difference is with the 2, they're kind of constantly reaching out to see what people need, while as 9s are the ones who are stepping in to kind of smooth things over. So if there's a conflict or 2 people aren't getting along, they're the diplomat. They're the person who's seeing each person's side and saying, hey, this is where this person's coming from. This is where this person's coming from. You 2 kiss and make up, you know? So very much like, it just makes sense. When I was reading my type, I was like, well, no wonder I want to be a counselor. Like all the, you know, all the suggestions were like things like social worker, counselor, you know, whatever. Mm-hmm. So it just makes a lot of sense. Like, of course, like seeing other people's perspective, it's a gift and a curse at the same time, because also makes 9s very indecisive because they're like, well, I don't want to cause this person to be upset. And also I see this person's perspective, but also I agree with this other person. So, yeah.
Yeah. No. And I think one of the things that I loved most about the Enneagram, because like you said, compared to other personality types or personality tests, a lot of times it just sort of gives you like, these are your strengths. And like Strengths Finders, it tells you like, these are the things that you're strong in, but then it, for some reason, it always seems to make the negative sound so negative or so, you know, just, I don't know, like, it just seems like there's all the tests I've taken in the past have kind of made things seem like that this is the bad side of you. Whereas the Enneagram, it wasn't so much that way. It was more like, hey, these are the things that you are kind of known for. And then there's also these things, the side of you that maybe isn't necessarily your best traits, but it has its own purpose. And so I liked the way it kind of balanced that out. Cause I know for me with 7s, one of the biggest things is they have like real hard time with like FOMO, which fits me perfectly. Like I was telling my husband when I was explaining this to him, I said, you know, I saw someone post on Facebook, like even just a casual acquaintance, someone that I knew from years ago when I was teaching, and they'd posted about going to some concert. It wasn't even a concert for anybody I cared to see, but I still was like, man, that looks like it would have been so much fun. I wish I could have gone to that. And he's like, you don't even like that type of music. I'm like, I know, but it's just an experience I missed out on. And so I think it's really interesting to see, you know, kind of I hate to say good and bad, but like the positive side of your personality, and then also sort of the more negative side of your personality, but that it's not necessarily a negative, if that makes sense.
I like to describe it this way. And this is before I even knew anything about the Enneagram, but like, so my mom was a teacher for many years for kindergarten, God bless her.
Yeah, no kidding.
but yeah, so like she was talking about kids in her classroom who, you know, she would need to talk to the parents about ways that they've been acting out or whatever. And which is a rough conversation. Like that's hard to sit down with Mama Bear and Papa Bear and tell them like, hey, I need you to know some things, but still be honest and not sugarcoat it. But we were talking about how to deliver, criticism in a way that's both honest, but isn't like devaluing, you know what I mean? Because like you never want to put someone down or make them feel like this is unfixable or this is, this like tragic thing or whatever. And so it's like, you know what, it's like this, like every single characteristic, like you can have this amazing characteristic, like being really compassionate, right? Like that's my favorite example. I have a friend who is just extremely compassionate, like always sees the best in people. And that's an amazing trait. Like nothing in me would want to say like, hey, go chuck that in the bin. Like absolutely keep that. But also keep in mind that with that, on the other side of the coin, there's always a possibility that if you're not careful, people can take advantage of that and you can become overworked or you can become taken advantage of, because there are people who want to take that and use that for their own desire, whatever that may be. So it's not about saying, okay, your personality sucks, so go, put it into the trash can. It's just saying, hey, have some awareness that this is a superpower. It really is. I don't use that term to be cute. Like it really is your superpower, like own it. But at the same time, have some awareness of where it could go when you're unhealthy and then work on that. It's not about saying, oh, well, I'm really bad at this and it's awful and whatever. It's there. That knowledge is there so that you can work on it and become better. Like it's very much a practical tool that you can change. Like you have every capability to change and to work on. So to me, it's really empowering, but you just have to explain it in such a way that people get like, you are both. You are 100% both. Like you make mistakes like any human being will, and has the potential to, but also you have this amazing potential to like live into those incredible qualities that you have. Just got to know what they are. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, and I think some people too, like they hear, personality test or they hear Enneagram and they think, well, how can something define me? Like, how can it put me in a box? Because like, again, I use the example of me being a 7. There's personality aspects to me that fit a 7 to a T, but there's other things from other numbers I feel like are partly me too. And so I think some people are hesitant to like label themselves a certain personality type or an Enneagram number. And so what do you say to people who are like, well, that's all good and great, but like some online test can't tell me everything I need to know about me?
Yeah. Oh, I have so much to say. I have so much to say to that person because I have heard that several times. And here's the thing, I'll try to be brief and not like talk your ear off about it. But here's the thing, like, again, kind of delving into my more like analytic side, like I'm a super touchy-feely person, but also switching over to that like analytical mind. Like, as much as it would be ridiculous for me to claim that a man-made personality test can tell me everything that I will ever need to know about you, right? That would be crazy. Like, I don't know what you ate for breakfast this morning. I don't know what kind of clothes you like to wear, what your favorite ice cream flavor is, like all of those things. As much as it would be ridiculous to claim that this just covers all the ground of a human being, because that would be impossible. It's just as ridiculous and crazy to say that, well, no one can define me because, I'm so special and so unique that even though I share, space with a billion other people on the planet, like there are no commonalities between me and someone else.
Right?
So I wouldn't say, this is how I would describe it, like in 2 parts. The Enneagram is a spider web. It's helping you connect dots. It's helping you connect one thing to the other and showing you kind of the next step in front of you or why you do what you do. It's not a blanket. It's not meant to cover every single detail and aspect of your life. That would be impossible and crazy. And if it could do that, then anyone working in Enneagram would be making like millions of dollars, right? It could predict the weather or, the stock market or something.
Right. That'd be awesome.
But, which would be super cool, but it doesn't do that. Also, I would describe it, it's a GPS system. When I turn my GPS on to go to whatever location, I don't close my eyes and let it drive the car for me. You know what I mean? Like, I still have to have my senses about me. I'm still making my own decisions. I'm still deciding whether I want to take the GPS's route or not, but I am taking it into account.
Right.
So I would just say it's a tool, like anything else. It's a tool, and you can decide how much stock you want to give it or not.
I love that. I love the GPS example because that's so true. And yeah, like there's one aspect of like sevens that I kind of looked at in that same idea, and which is that I guess sevens don't love feeling the hard emotions. Like we tend to gloss over those or use humor to come around them. And that's definitely exactly what I do, but I'd never really looked at it in that way. I'd always just looked at it as, I don't know, that was just kind of me or how I was raised, I guess. And once I was able to understand that and look at it as not something that is wrong with me, but as something that I need to work on and something that now that I'm aware of, I can address and I can kind of look at it from different angles, it definitely has helped me become more aware of situations where I might be pushing those feelings aside and address them a little bit more. So I love that it's not necessarily the end all be all, but it's just a guided system. Like you said, with the GPS example, I think that's really, really awesome.
Ooh, yeah, for sure. And like one of the things too, and like, I totally get what you mean. Cause like, I love talking and diving deep into like other people's feelings. But like, if someone wants to talk to me, like in the heat of the moment about like conflict, again, being a 9, don't like to deal with conflict or anger, which is, like an emotion that I like so deeply suppress. Like, I don't want to talk about that. Like, that's gross. Like, let's do anything but that. Right.
Yep.
So, but yeah, so like, I mean, I totally get what you mean, but yeah, it's so helpful to know where to start with that. So there's this quote, and I don't know who said it, but I think about it all the time. And it's, the truth will set you free, but first it will piss you off. And so,
I love that. Oh my gosh.
Because it's so true, right? Like,
it is.
Yeah. So like when I first read about my personality, one of the characteristics of the 9 is that because they see all these different people's perspective, it makes them indecisive, and B, they're really hard to type on the Enneagram because they're like, well, I see the perspective of the 2, so maybe I'm a 2, but also maybe I'm this, and blah, blah, blah. So, like, and I totally did that. But once I read like the core fears of the 9, as well as like the negative characteristics, that's when I knew, because I immediately was mad. I was like, that's like, I'm mad that that's true. Like, I can't deny that it's true, but I'm mad that it's true. And that's how I knew that was accurate, because it wasn't just telling me a bunch of BS that I wanted to hear, right? Yeah. Like, it was like, yes for the positives, but also yes for the negatives. Yeah,
absolutely. Okay, so now that we've kind of covered what the 9 numbers are and what their personality traits, kind of skimmed on those, let's talk a little bit about how knowing your Enneagram number, knowing the Enneagram number of other people can help you better your relationships. And of course, obviously tying it into like business, how it can help you. And I know this, a lot of times people can, say business, they talk about like employees. Like if you have employees, clearly it'd be nice to know their personality type. But I know a lot of people listening are solopreneurs. So they're doing this on their own. But even just within working with clients, working with other entrepreneurs, working with other people in their industry, how can knowing your Enneagram type and knowing even a little bit about theirs help you in those areas?
Yeah, absolutely. So, and I certainly have kind of gotten this question. I feel like people are kind of generally in 2 camps. They're either kind of in our camp where they're like, oh my gosh, personality test. Like, I love knowing about myself. I love knowing about other people. And they're more than willing to kind of dive deep into, well, what does that look like? What am I? What is this person? Or they're in the other box and they're like, well, that's all good and grand that you're a 6 or 12 or whatever, INFJ or INFP or whatever. But like, what on earth does that have to do with the brass tacks, practical, day-to-day, everyday things of relationships or business or whatever? And what I would say to that is, well, do you talk to people on a daily basis? Do you interact with your customers? Do you interact with clients? Do you interact with the barista at Starbucks? Do you interact with your family? Okay, great. Then you need this tool.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Because it might seem, trivial, or some people might even like characterize it as like narcissistic, or why would you need to know that much about yourself or whatever. But I think it definitely starts with you. But eventually too, it carries you onto other people. It carries you onto the dynamic that you have. I have this book in front of me, and although it's not an Enneagram book, there are similarities in that they talk about people's motivations and how to motivate people. So if you are in a business where you have employees, or you're, maybe a solo entrepreneur who's trying to team up with another business or trying to get clients or whatever, and it goes through a lot of people's motivations very similar to the Enneagram. And I've really found it helpful. It's called Dealing with People You Can't Stand.
Oh my gosh, I love that title.
Yeah, it's really awesome. And it's by Dr. Rick Brinkman and Dr. Rick Kirschner. I hope I'm saying that right. But yeah, what I really loved about it, and it's very, I'm someone whose imagination needs to be captured quickly. Like if you give me a lot of detail, like I've tuned you out and I'm bored. So this book is like super get down to brass tacks. This is what it is. Big picture, so it is more general. So for those of you who like are wanting like a detailed and deep dive explanation, maybe this isn't the book for you. But I found it really helpful in that it talks about just kind of, hey, if you're working with this person and you're thinking, gosh, like what can I do to get through to them? I just don't seem to be communicating with them very well. Or I really, really want to motivate my client, or I really, really want to motivate the person I'm working with to do this kind of work. If you are a task-oriented person and you're coming at things from the lens of, well, people will be motivated by accomplishing, because we see things typically how we are, right? Because that's the worldview we're coming from. Those are the tinted glasses we're wearing. And we assume that everybody else is like us and they're going to be motivated by accomplishing things. So you come to your client or you come to whoever and you say, this thing is so great and you should get it, or we should work on this thing together because we could achieve so much. And that person actually is motivated by relationship. Then there's a disconnect. You've lost them.
Yeah.
If you come to them and you say, I would so love to partner with you because I just think you're really great. I think your story and the heart behind your business is really awesome. And I want to get to know more about you. Well, guess what? You've won that person over, right?
Oh yeah.
Like a classic example. So my brother, who's also a 7, and a just really super motivated person, like has a bunch of different interests, and everything that he pursues, he goes at hard, right? Like he practiced the guitar until he knew it inside and out. Like he wanted to become a Marine, and so he, trained until he was one. He wanted to become a fireman, so he trained until he was one. Like, everything he does hard. So to an extent, like he is very much, task oriented, right? And he wants to get things done. I'm very relational. So one morning he asked me to go running with him. I am not a runner. I will never be a runner. As much as I would love to lie to people and say that I'm the kind of person who gets up at 6 a.m. and like loves to go for a run, that's such a lie. So he was like, come running with me. He's literally like jogging circles around me because I'm going so slow. And he's just like, I'm just complaining because I'm like sweating and tired and uncomfortable. And he's just bragging about how much faster he's going, whatever. And he's like, well, why did you come with me if you don't like to run? Like, I thought we were going to like go, achieve this run, right? This task.
Right.
And I'm like, well, because I wanted to spend time with you. Just because people are doing the same thing doesn't mean they're doing it for the same reason.
Yeah.
So when you figure out someone's motivation and what makes them tick in that respect, like you have their ear and their heart and their attention, and in a completely different way than if you went at it from solely your perspective or what you think they want to hear.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's so good. So as you were talking, it kind of reminded me, before I'd ever heard about the Enneagram, one of the best tools I'd found, and I relate this back to with my husband, was the love languages. And it was the idea that like my love language is completely different than his. You know, mine's is like words of affirmation and gifts, and his is acts of service. And once I figured that out and I realized that like, he doesn't need me to buy him these expensive gifts or any gifts at all. Like he wants me to help with the dishes, and he wants me to, you know, fix him a meal, or he wants me to like be with him. And because it's either acts of service or, like time, when it's like time, quality time. And so even little things like putting our phones down and just watching a show together with zero distractions, that meant more to him. Whereas it didn't always mean something to me, but knowing that about him allowed me to shift how I was trying to show him I loved him. And so the same thing, that's kind of how I look at the Enneagram, and what you were saying was that makes so much sense, because if you're talking to a client and you're talking about, like you said, the results oriented aspect, when really they just want to know, you know, how is this going to help them better their relationships, or how is this going to help them, you know, build a relationship with you or feel more connected to you, then you need to know how to speak in that language. I think that's really, really a huge key piece. And for anyone that's listened to the podcast, and I think you mentioned this, you listened to this one, the episode 2, all about your ideal client, even adding in, you know, what Enneagram type are they, can help you know how to speak to your ideal client even better. Because if your ideal client is someone who is a 9 and, you know, is the peacemaker and who doesn't want to ruffle feathers and who likes to, you know, kind of be there for everybody else, then you need to be speaking to them in a way that's going to resonate with them.
Yeah. And absolutely. When I was listening to that podcast in particular, I kept thinking about, and there are several examples that come to mind, but like one of the main ones, it's so funny because I don't even like his movies, but Seth Rogen, I remember this interview with Seth Rogen, and he was talking about, he's directed a lot of movies, and he was talking about, his client base, basically, so to speak. And he's like, I don't have one. He's like, I don't make movies with someone else in mind. He goes, I make movies that I would enjoy watching and that my friends would enjoy watching. And one of the things I feel like has kind of taken, you know, traditional business mindset by storm over and over again is that people like to feel like things are tailor-made for them. I think that's why all of these sort of niche online businesses are so hot right now, is because we're finally tapping into that no one likes to feel like they are on a chain email of a bunch of different businesses that are all saying the same thing to thousands of different people. And I mean, I've heard Taylor Swift say this in an interview. I've heard, I think it's the Duffman brothers who made Stranger Things. Like, they were like, when they pitch Stranger Things, people are like, no one is going to like this because it's so niche. Like, it's based in the 80s and this generation isn't from the 80s, but it's about kids, but it's not a kid's show. It's horror, but it's also funny. Like, they're like, it's too weird and out there and people won't like it. And all of those niche things is what people loved about it.
Oh yeah.
Because it wasn't for everyone, because they weren't trying to catch everyone. They were trying to catch their specific client, because like you had explained, you know, think of a specific person that you're reaching, and then you're sure to catch that person, and, you know, not 1,000 nameless, faceless people who maybe aren't that great of a match for your brand or for whatever it is that you're selling.
Yeah. No, that's interesting. I love that show. My husband and I watch it, and it's true. Like, when the first time I heard of it, I was like, there's no way I'm going to like this show. Same thing with, like, I don't know if you ever watched Game of Thrones, but that's a very kind of niche show too. And I was like, there's no way I'm going to like this show. But once I started, I was like, okay, I'm clearly the person that they were at, like the Stranger Things. I mean, I was raised in the 80s. I was a kid in the 80s. Like, I resonate with those things. And while I didn't necessarily love the horror part of it, because I hate scary movies and things like that. But
but I loved the show because it did have that balance, you know? And so the fact that there's stories like that all the time where someone pitches an idea and it gets shot down because people think, oh, there's no way nobody's going to love that. And it becomes this huge thing. I think that's because it's so specific. You know, you can't nowadays, you can't have something that's this huge, broad, you know, idea, because then nobody's really going to know who it's for. And if they don't know it's for them, then they're not going to be interested.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think that's really smart. And I love, you know, tying it back into the whole Enneagram idea. I think that's a really great way to help kind of narrow down your niche, is to know, like, who exactly am I targeting? Am I targeting those type threes that are like the high achieving CEOs? Or do I want more of, you know, the eights who I have to kind of dig a little deeper to really get in past that hard outer shell and make that effort a little bit more? You know, knowing that, I think, can make how you position your business and how you approach your clients that much easier to understand, as opposed to being like, well, I want to appeal to the 2s and the 6s and the 5s, you know, because then it just gets
everywhere.
It gets to be way, way too hard. There's no possible way to do all of that. It becomes too overwhelming.
Oh yeah, for sure. And it's like, I mean, it's like this, it's like, that's kind of a weird example, but it's kind of like dating. Like, unless you know, want like 9 husbands or whatever, like, you're not trying to make everybody happy. Like, not everyone is going to like what you like. Not everyone is going to laugh at the same jokes or like enjoy doing the same things. And that's fine. It's not about trying to please everyone or trying to match up with everyone. It's about finding that one person who is a good fit and is a good match, and recognizing that not everyone will be, and that's fine. That's not how it's supposed to be, you know?
Yeah. Well, oh my gosh, that's so, so good. Okay. So is there anything else you want to share or talk about with the Enneagram before we kind of wrap things up?
Oof, yeah. So, I'll try to be brief.
No, hey, whatever you want to share, you go for it.
Yeah, absolutely. So, the main thing that has kind of differentiated Enneagram for me, and there has been a lot of aspects that I've really appreciated, but like I've said before, I looked into a lot of personality tests, you know, love and hate, different things about each of them. And Myers-Briggs will always have like a special place in my heart. But what I love about Enneagram the most is that it's so incredibly practical. There's nothing about it that, like I said, is like trying to sugarcoat people's personalities. And then on top of that, I think when you see those like positive and negative characteristics, for me, it's helped so much to see how much we just desperately need each other, and how much we desperately need to communicate and be communicated with. There's just like no escaping that. Like, no man is an island. We all need to feel loved and valuable and cherished. And I think the more that we understand each other, the easier that is to do. So I really love that Enneagram has kind of given me the opportunity to kind of skip past small talk and where did you go to school and what do you do for a living and all those things, and just get to like brass tacks of like, what are you afraid of? What do you love? You know, I'm way more interested in that than I am in what you majored in or, you know, the kind of person you were in high school. Like, yeah, I would way rather, know that about you and feel connected to someone through those means than through something superficial. So yeah, it's just really given me a really big appreciation for how much we need each other, how much we all need connection and to feel loved. And then just to like see like, man, each of these personality types is an aspect, is a characteristic of, you know, the creator who created us. And so, you know, if we dismiss someone and we say, well, that person's just a weirdo, they don't see things from my perspective, so therefore, you know, they don't get it or they're dumb or whatever, you know, we dismiss that characteristic of, you know, the creator, and that's a shame. Like, so it's kind of given me a newfound curiosity for life and for people. And so instead of coming at it from, man, that waiter or waitress is really snappy at me, I just can go, okay, what are they going through today? Mm-hmm. What might their personality be? Maybe someone said something to them that bounced off them the wrong way. And it's given me so much more empathy and curiosity for the world around me. So I think it's made things really, really magical, as cheesy as that sounds.
No, I think that's awesome. I love that. And I think, I mean, gosh, there are days where I'm like, man, I wish I had studied like psychology in school or something, because I love like diving into just sort of what makes people tick and how people react to things and all that kind of stuff. And so anytime that someone shares a glimpse of like who they are on that deeper level, like you said, like, I don't care where you went to school. I don't care how many pets you have. That's all good and great. I want to know about you as a person. And so, I've started trying to share a little more of that, like even on social media and with Instagram and stuff. And, I talk about being a 7 and the downfalls of that. And I talked a while back about how it was a struggle for me when I was missing out on like this really big trip that some friends went on, and how I struggled with that. And I talk about just the fact that like as a 7 and being like the entertainer, there are times that I don't want to be the one that's supposed to bring the fun to the party. And those are the things that like I'm putting out there. I want to see people talk about that. I just had this conversation today, a friend of mine who has started up a little boutique, and she's kind of fighting the whole idea of being on social media. I'm like, you need to let people see who you are, because gone are the days where people go to Instagram and Facebook to see the pretty stuff. They go there to make actual authentic connections with people. And I get excited when someone posts something that says something about their lives that is not superficial. If they're talking about a struggle they had, if they're talking about a part of their lives that has been difficult or exciting, or, what is it that makes you get up every day and do what you do? Like those are the things that I want to see more of. And so if this Enneagram helps people share that in a way that feels less intimidating, like to know that, hey, I'm a 6 or a 7 or a 9 or a 2, and I can put that out there, and there's going to be other people who get that because they're also those things. I think that's such a great thing for people to have, to know that, okay, I'm not alone in the fact that I feel this way. I feel this way. And there's a whole other group of people out there who feel this way, because there's only, 9 numbers in the Enneagram. We all are going to fit into one of those 9 numbers, which means there's going to be a lot of other people who are similar to you. And so I would say, if anything, encouraging people like, hey, share more of that. Get on there, take the test. I'll link to if you'll send me some links for tests people can take online, I'll put them in the show notes, and go take the test and share with us, like, what is your number, and tell us a little bit about why you think that makes you who you are, because we'll find people that can relate to that as well.
Yeah, absolutely.
Awesome. Thank you so much for chatting with me. I was so excited to talk to you. I'm so glad that I came across your information. And actually, thank you to Summer for sharing your information, because that's how I found you. So Thank you to Summer.
Thanks, Summer.
Yeah.
And thank you so much for having me.
Of course. I loved it. And so, well, first of all, before we go, tell everybody where they can find you if they want to follow you or learn more about what you offer.
Yeah, absolutely. So I offer coaching services for the Enneagram. All the tests that you're going to take that are free are a condensed version of the tests that I would give you through my coaching. So so the most in-depth, and some would say most accurate, is going to be from the Enneagram Institute. Everything else is going to be a condensed version. But you can find me on Instagram. Go to Big Pick Enneagram. And you'll see me, or I'll put my personal account on public again, so that you can find the link to that as well. But or Barbie on Instagram. I have a website. It is coming in the new year. Not quite set up yet, but it will be by New Year, and you can find pricing and more info there as well.
Awesome. Well, yeah. Well, and I'll have all that information in the show notes so people can go and just click on it and check it out. And well, thank you so much for joining us today. And we'll talk to you again soon.
All right. Thanks.
Oh, that was so much fun. A huge, huge thank you to Barbie for taking the time out of her day to chat with us. I truly loved learning so much about the Enneagram and all the different numbers and the qualities and how we can use it to help us personally and professionally. So I want to ask you a big favor. Will you head over to the Girl Means Business Facebook group, and then just request to join if you haven't already, and then share with us your Enneagram number. I want to know what number you are and how it affects you in your business, or if this is all new to you, just what you learned from it. I think it's so interesting to hear the different personality types, the different numbers, and how we think differently and view the world differently. It's such an interesting conversation starter for me. So please head over to the Facebook group, share with us your number and anything insights you've learned from this episode or from any other Enneagram episodes you've heard on other podcasts. I'm always open to learning about new things and hearing more about the Enneagram. All right, ladies, that does it for this week. I hope you have a wonderful, fabulous week, and I will talk to you again next week, same time, same place. Bye, guys. If you loved today's episode, don't forget to click the subscribe button so you never miss when a new episode goes live. Then head over to iTunes and leave a quick review to let other people know just how much you loved it. Thanks, ladies. See you next week.